Hey there, this is Enoch with Defending Utah. Let's talk about the Roe v. Wade decision. Somebody wants you to think that this battle is won so that you step out of the battle. Like always with these political games, no problem is actually being solved. Stay with me. I'm going to tell you about what has happened in Utah's past and help you to see the full picture. So let's move on to Roe v. Wade for our training. Roe v. Wade reality check. Okay, so we've done reports in the past where we've said this a lot, right? Supreme Court doesn't matter. And all the hype is about the Supreme Court overturning this. And, of course, it's certainly in an emotional win. It feels like progress. We've been feeling for a long time, how ever since Roe v. Wade, how many millions of babies have died. You can calculate that every year. And so it's really been pounded into our heads. And now it's like, my goodness, we won. Where did that come from? And so it's just not downplaying, what's great if babies' lives are saved, and if in the short run some states maybe do less. But it's just we're going to look at some things here and think about the big picture. Okay, so this is a recent John Birch Society video on the subject. We're just going to play a little clip from it.
Roe v. Wade offers us a series of civic lessons for all Americans. So let's get into these. First and foremost is that the judicial system violates the very first line of the Constitution after the preamble. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress. Even those with a rudimentary grasp of mathematics understand that all legislative powers leaves none for the other two branches of the federal government. The court's opinion of Roe v. Wade was just that, an opinion that binds plaintiff and defendant. It should have never been the rule of law, or even worse, a right created by government that it has now taken away.
A couple of takeaways from there, right, that we talked about before. All legislative powers in Congress. So the Supreme Court only binds the plaintiff and the defendant to the decision. Those are the only two that have any legal accountability to what the Supreme Court says in their opinion. So let's think about that for a minute. What are we being distracted from? I'm not necessarily giving a definitive explanation what's really going on, just putting out some other ideas to think about as part of the big picture in all of this. Okay, this just came out today, actually. Came across this. They're supposedly stopping abortion federally because of Roe v. Wade, but yet here's federal legislation under the Women's Health Protection Act. So if this legislation went through federally, that has more weight, even though it's still unconstitutional. It has more weight than a Supreme Court decision, because Supreme Court decision is not law. Congress can write law, but now you have to argue the constitutionality of the law. And so it's just as illegitimate ultimately in the end, but in the minds of the people, it would be a stronger position. So something to think about. They've always got another angle or something coming around the corner. They're 10 steps ahead. What about returning power to the states? Didn't Roe v. Wade return power to the states? Well, let's talk about what powers the states really have.
The 10th Amendment of the Constitution reads that any powers not delegated to the federal government are kept by the states, the people. State legislators, or I should say state legislatures, could have also nullified this ruling or case law and enacted and enforced their own laws making abortions illegal.
Okay, so here they're explaining that states always had the power to make abortions legal. because of the 10th Amendment. So nullification is key. States have always had the power, and they still do. So the states have the power. In fact, the states took action on this in 2004. In fact, if you're in the pro-life movement and you've been politically active for a long time, you know through there's Catholic pro-life groups, there was Pro-Life Utah. We've had many pro-life groups throughout the years. They're always very active, pushing for state legislation of various types. And so nothing new here, but what happened in 2004 was above and beyond what normally happens. The pressure was so great on the legislature that Utah actually stopped abortions. Okay, so we wrote an article about this in 2015. So I recommend go check out this article and read the full story. So I'm not going to go over the whole thing here. But the story in 2015 was talking about the past. So in 2015, there was another renewed spike in trying to stop abortion. It kind of comes in waves over the years. And so 2015, this new wave comes in. That was when Pro-Life Utah was started. So in 2004, what happened was that there was so much pressure on the legislature to cease public funding of abortion that they actually did it. There was a lot of back and forth, and the article goes over that. And ultimately, in the end, the legislature conceded, but they did it kind of begrudgingly. There's audio recording on there of them laughing about the whole situation. And what they ultimately did was they said, obviously, the people are pushing too hard, and they just wanted the people off their backs. So they passed this bill. And then 3 months later, they did an emergency with the Utah Department of Health. They did an emergency change in what's called administrative rules. And administrative rules is sort of like legislation, but it's like after legislation, they can rewrite the law in a way. It's supposed to be how you practically implement the law. And so it's sort of like you can get away with re-legislating in these administrative rules. So they redefined public funding, and then abortions have been funded ever since. So the states did take action already, which is where we should take action. But we see the root cause of our problem is a conspiracy, which is what we talk about here a lot, right? So there was conspiring men who said, okay, let's just placate the people, and then when they're not looking, we're going to make this switch. So who did that switch? Kurt Bramble. Okay, so this was a meme we put out, kind of on the left side. He co-sponsors this bill. So the top left you can see, co-sponsors HB 123 to outlaw abortion, right? And then later he kills the bill and denies he was a co-sponsor. Then later he says, he runs the bill again, it passes. Then later he adjust the administrative rules, as I explained. Then anyway, you can just see the back and forth here, right? So it goes back and forth, and then in the end, Kurt Bramble was the guy who protected the abortion industry. And then fast forward to 2015, when Pro-Life Utah was running the legislation, there were insiders who went to Bruce Rigby and said, why don't you have Kurt Bramble run all your bills for you? And then they suggested to him, oh, you're running too many bills. And they convinced him to only run one bill. And that one bill, Kurt Bramble got to run. And then he got to claim he was a pro-life champion. And the bill was simply give anesthetic to babies if you're going to abort them. Right. So fundamentally, it doesn't change anything in the abortion industry. So Kurt Bramble, when he saw this meme, he liked it. Like, so he's just proud. So fundamentally, our problem doesn't come from the Supreme Court. Our problems don't come from any of the traditional sources we think of. Our problems come from understanding the tactics and strategies of a conspiracy that operates behind the scenes. Okay, so key points, they pretend to give people wins. and they plan on winning anyway. That doesn't mean they're all powerful and they always will win, but as long as we don't understand their tactics and the nature of the beast, then they will keep winning. Okay, so do Utah politicians have any intention to do the right thing? So on Politico, there was an article, this is now recent, where they went through every state and they said, where are abortions, what's going to happen to abortions now that Roe v. Wade is overturned? And there's a little drop down, you can pick any state. So I picked Utah, and actually I picked a whole bunch. I looked through all the states, like a big list. Most places it's going to be legal now, but then several places it's like partially. Utah soon to be illegal. Well, gosh, that sounds like a big win. In Utah, it's going to be illegal. No more babies will die, right? In Utah, 10 babies are killed every day. That has never changed except for those 3 months in 2004. So 10 babies every day. After this has passed, there will still be 10 babies killed every day. So even though it's soon to be illegal in Utah, so what's going on? When you dig into the data on this site, they try to explain to you, here's what's going to happen. It'll be illegal as soon as Legislative Council certifies the Supreme Court ruling. Well, once they do that, and even if then it allegedly returns to the states, what's even on the books in Utah? Okay, so what they say here is abortion will be legal in, and all these keywords, almost all cases. They say the law contains exceptions for, what are the exceptions, right? Things we always hear, rape, incest, save the life of the pregnant person. Funny how they say pregnant person, not woman now, right?
I noticed that.
Yeah. Or cases of fetal defect or brain abnormality. What we have found in 10 years of defending Utah, every time we thought there was something good, a good bill comes in and we want to get excited about it, we're wondering if there's a win. The devil is always in the details. The language can sound very positive until they put in the exception. And what you find is that all the tyranny funnels through that exception, right? This happened a lot in the lands transfer movement when we were talking about the Agenda 21 regional government that was taking lands from the ranchers, and they were taking away the power of the sheriff to protect ranchers' rights. And they said, oh, no, the sheriff is completely in charge, except in cases of wildlife. And they kept throwing that out there, and then they would just stand on, nope, we're protecting the power of the sheriff, only in wildlife, and they would keep repeating that. And if you remember the Bundy's case, when the BLM went to take all their cows, it was, well, there's a wild turtle on your land. That was fundamentally the excuse. So tyranny legislates all these positive sounding wins for us while they strategically funnel anything they want to do through these excuses. Okay, so another thing about winning, did pro-life win? So Saul Alinsky was a 1960s radical who was a communist, and he wrote a book called Rules for Radicals, which was basically a modern day communist playbook, how to organize people and organize a revolution. This was an article talking about his tactics, okay, where he discusses his book. The key to community organizing is that it's not about winning on any one issue. The enemies of liberty don't care that they win or lose on every issue. Okay, but what they do is they focus on building community and power. Issues of the day, they're simply tools for the building process. So what's going on here is, even though there's a win in the Supreme Court, there's a strong emotional division. And so as they're trying to pass federal legislation now, they're creating issues. And so the issues end up becoming the tools for building the organization to promote the tyranny. Okay, on our website, under the Learn tab, there's a section on socialism and communism. Okay, and so I like to refer to that. The reason we have that up there is because these are foundational videos that discuss the principles of how communism organizes. And communism isn't fundamentally the head of the conspiracy, but we can understand a conspiracy because the tactics they use are all found in communism. So this film, Anarchy USA, talks about the 5-step process that communism uses to invade a country. And this is what they used all throughout the 1900s as communism spread throughout the world and slowly overturned various kings and their local dictators or new dictators, or if there was a legitimate government, communism spread. And they did it with this 5-step plan. In that 5-step plan, there's one specific step. Okay, and the step I'm just focusing on right now is step number 2, divide the people. So they always had to, you can imagine them in a boardroom, coming into a new country, just observing the people around them and saying, how can we categorize these people into 2 groups? And they'll just decide off the top of their head what they think they'll be best at. In China, they said the farmers and the landowners. The film talks about this, and they go through a bunch of examples. So they pick 2 sides, and then they send out their leaders to organize people emotionally for those 2 sides. So by dividing the people fight each other, and the communists can then move forward unopposed. In fact, even they'll be the heroes as they solve the division. Okay, so just by understanding that principle, then we can kind of observe in general. So this was downtown Salt Lake. I'm just going to play like the first 10 seconds, 5 seconds, right? Not the whole thing. And but you can go to our YouTube channel or any of our channels and watch the whole thing yourself. But you kind of see this, how worked up these people are.
Go home! Go home! You don't get
and really, in the end, they're just victims of the whole game. So another thing, just now, because of unrest, these rumors spread around. Department of Homeland Security sends out warning to churches to step up security. I don't know, maybe someone will be crazy, but our history shows that every time there was riots and there's craziness, it's always organized by the conspiracy through the government, through various means. So without exception,